Russ, how are you?
I'm incredible.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. And thank you very much for doing this. You're waking me up out of my nappy nunu time. And I was watching your show this morning, your live stream, and you had an incredible story about some cigars. You feel like repeating that or not?
Sure. It was right around 1982, and I had been in the business at that point for about 6 years. And I got a call from a friend whose grandfather had passed away, and he lived about 2 miles away from where I lived. And they needed his cigar collection appraised for insurance purposes. So he asked me if I knew of somebody who could do it, and I said, actually, I'm pretty sure I could do it for you. And so he told me when and where, and so I drove out, and this big house. I mean, it was like an 8 bedroom house, and and so he walked me inside, and he said that the humidor was down in the basement. And I'm thinking to myself, 250, maybe 300 count humidor, and I'm going to have to go through single in the boxes. He watched me downstairs, and there's a closet door, and he opens it up, and it would be like a walk-in closet in a bedroom, that size. All cedar shelves with a humidification unit on the floor and boxes stacked on the shelves.
I'm crying here. I'm crying.
So I see off to the right, he's got like 1980 mark, and there are boxes of Hoy de Nicaragua and Arturo Fuente and Punch. And of course, those are easy because the prices are around current. So I'm going to the left, and I'm seeing 77 and 72. And then it gets into the 60s. And then it gets into the early 60s. And when I see the early 60s, I see that these are boxes, unopened boxes of Cubans, pre embargo Cubans. So at that point, I had to use his phone to call somebody because the only way you can price them is what they're going for in auction. So I had somebody take the sheet from the auction, and then I told them what was here, and he would tell me what they sold for at the auction. So I'm making the list and everything else, and I get done, and I come up with a figure and give it to him, and his eyes got huge when he saw the number because they could have gone for a lot of money. And so we went out to get a bite to eat, and I was going home right away because I had to work the next day. So I we had dinner, and we went back to the house because that's where my car was. And he said, "Give me a minute." And he goes inside, and he comes out with a paper bag, and he hands it to me. And I said, "What's this?" He said, "Just to thank you for taking the time." So I put the bag down on the seat, and I'm driving, and I'm halfway home on the throughway, and there's a rest stop. So I figure, you know what, I need a cup of coffee. So I pull off, go and get myself a cup of coffee, go back out to the car, and I figure I'll look to see what's in the bag. I open the bag, and it's an unopened box of 1957 Partagas 898. My birth year. So that box lasted me 7 years.
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
I only took one out on special occasions.
absolutely. And how uh, there's no words actually to describe something like that. There's no words, but how milky and rich was that smoke and smooth.
Well, the fact that it had been kept in a humidified room all those years, the cigars were in just superb condition. Um, Creamy was certainly one word I would use, and spice, but more of an herbal type spice. More of like an Old Bay seasoning type spice rather than straight out pepper. Um, Incredibly complex. At that point, that cigar I would consider medium bodied if you bought one today. And it had gotten a little bit lighter than medium, but the intensity of the flavor was more more medium to full, and they were just heaven in a stick.
So did you smoke it past the band?
I actually, with one, I finished it up in a pipe.
I never thought about that, but that's a good idea.
Oh yeah, I took one. We're actually getting a pipe in our Baracchini brand later on this year that's designed to smoke Toscanos in.
Oh my god.
You take the Toscano, stick it in the pipe, light it, and smoke it all the way down.
I haven't. Here's a good question for you. I've been, I haven't smoked a cigar in maybe 2 years type thing. But I started off smoking cigars. As a matter of fact, on my honeymoon with my ex, and she's still alive, but I don't know. That just came out.
Okay.
Um, we went to Cuba. Or Cuba. We went to Cuba because I know you Americans can't go to Cuba
Hmm.
because of some sort of deal in '63 or something, whatever. And so I brought back from Cuba 17 boxes of cigars. 17. That lasted me 7 years. Funny that you said that box lasted you seven,
Yep.
but these 17 boxes lasted me 7 years. And I remember scoring a box of 25 of Luisitanias Partagas, like they must
Yep.
have been this big.
I think they're a 7.5 inch cigar, 8 inch cigar.
They would last me 3.5 hours. That's when I was into hockey, and I would smoke that for a whole hockey game, and I would share it because that's the beauty of something beautiful like that. And I paid that box, Russ, $18.
Yeah.
$18, man, and they were the real thing. I mean, I bought it at Casa del Habano. I mean, I'm a smoker. I know. So my question was, I've been smoking pipe tobaccos. Now, if I smoke a robusto cigar, like not the size, but a chunky cigar, am I gonna get a head spin?
Uh, yeah, it probably depends on the pipe tobaccos you smoke. Like, it wouldn't affect me at all because I tend to smoke a lot of really strong tobaccos.
Like when you say
Um,
strong tobaccos, what's a strong tobacco?
well, anything with a significant amount of dark fired Kentucky, dark
Okay.
dark burley, um, the Lakeland tobaccos because they use African Virginias that are really high in nicotine. So, I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think so. You'd have to smoke a real power bomb to even get a buzz from it. I think, if you were to smoke a Toro sized Hoya de Nicaragua Antaño and you smoked it in 20 minutes, maybe that might mess you up a little bit.
it's
But
because
other than that, I wouldn't worry about it too much.
it's because I remember once I was working at a farmer's market, and I see this guy walking out, and he's got a Toscano in his mouth, but the mini Toscanos, that I'm
Yeah.
not mini, but the half cut
No,
ones.
the Amazzatis.
Is that what they're called? Amazzaris?
Yeah, the half length ones are called Amazzatis.
Okay. Now I just got it. Let me correct your Italian. It's ammazzati, meaning
Okay.
the killed one.
Oh, okay.
So it makes sense. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
So he's got an Amazzari in his mouth, and I say, "Hey, man, you got a Toscano there? I'd like to have one." So he gives me one, and I haven't had a smoke like that in a while. And it was a sunny day, and I'm cutting my grass. I shoved the Toscano in my mouth, and I'm not wearing a hat. And I remember smoking it and passing out.
Yeah, they can do that because those cigars are mostly made of a version of dark fired Kentucky and dark burley. That's all they're made of.
And they're personally, I love that taste. It was rich and
Oh
smooth,
yeah.
really smooth. And that cigar you smoked, can you compare it being aged in 50, what'd you say, 57?
Yeah.
Okay, so it being aged that long, is there anything comparable today that you can get? And it's a stupid question, off the shelf.
The closest thing I can think of to that cigar is a cigar that's made for our corporation by AJ Fernandez in Nicaragua. Um, it's called Ave Maria,
Hmm.
and it comes in a variety of sizes. Um, it's a medium bodied cigar that smokes like a much heavier cigar. The flavor is very rich, but it doesn't bowl you over. And it has a real distinct creaminess to it.
Mm.
And the primary character is wood, which I also got from that Partagas.
For sure.
So that I would say that's probably the closest thing to that aged Partagas that I've come across. Um, AJ is an absolute master.
And
When
is
it
it
comes,
do I have to remortgage my house to buy a stogie?
no, no, I mean they're not cheap,
I could
but
get one for $25.
they're less than that.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah,
Remember, I'm
well,
Canadian, eh? I'm
yeah,
Canadian.
yeah. In Canadian dollars, it might be about $150, but around the U.S., it's about 80.
You know,
So
you're not joking. You're not joking. I'm telling you.
no, I know your taxes.
Ah, Jesus. The Louisitanias that you go buy them today, they're over $100.
Oh yeah,
Easy, easy. But anyways,
yep.
Russ, we're here to talk about pipe tobacco, not stogies. So please don't detract me. Don't
Okay,
detract
all
me.
right, all right.
Okay, so today we got 5 blends, Russ, and I chose the same company that's right now. Um, uh, they sold their license for the pipe tobacco to Peterson's now, and it's Dunhill. Okay,
Yeah,
now how old is the Dunhill name when they started the pipe tobacco? How long ago?
I think the pipe tobaccos date back to the 30s.
Ah, okay.
The company dates back though to around 1900. Maybe before that, but before that, they weren't involved in tobacco at all. Um, Dunhill started out selling items for people riding bicycles and in carriages. And the first product that they made in the tobacco field was what they called a windshield pipe. So, if you want to get a real simple idea of what a windshield pipe is, Think of a regular old billiard, okay? And you got it in front of you with the bowl to your left and the stem to the right. Now you go to the top of the bowl
Hmm.
and you cut down like a half an inch straight down, and then you cut back toward the stem so that the front of the bowl is about a half inch higher than the back side of the bowl. The idea being, if you were riding in a carriage or in a newfangled automobile, and you had the wind in your face as you're riding, you could smoke the pipe, and that would shield it from the airflow. That was the first thing that Dunhill got into, and then they got into more pipe accessories, and then eventually cigars. But I think that the tobaccos that we know of today started in the 1930s.
Okay, so then, look, I'm sure in the 1930s there was a lot of those nickel cigars you could buy,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and all that. And you being born in the 1800s, you remember the 1930s
I
nickel
was
cigars?
born in 1827.
Sorry, man. By the way, I'm not much younger than you are.
Okay.
If I'm probably older.
My age is two digits, and they're both the same.
44. Okay, okay. Okay, so back then in the 30s, was there a lot of choice tobaccos? Because these are choice tobaccos, the Dunhill tobaccos, I think.
There weren't as many packaged tobaccos, and not as many high end packaged tobaccos. Most of what you got were either the OTC blends, the basic burley blends. Maybe they'd have a little Virginia, a little Latakia or something in it, but that was pretty much it. And then if you went to a local shop, they were all hand blending tobaccos there. Sometimes they were very good, sometimes not. Um, but they became probably the prominent
Okay,
in on this side of the pond. There were
okay,
probably a lot more in the European side.
okay.
But
So sorry, Russ. Sorry, I
no,
don't want to cut you
no,
off.
no, go ahead.
Okay, so that's why Dunhill well, that's why it's well for the pipe tobaccos. That's why it's a coveted thing, Dunhill, because anyways, they've been around, name
Yeah,
branding, whatever. So we're gonna start with, and it's funny, we're gonna start with Early Morning Pipe by Dunhill.
yep,
Now, I used to when I was into um Oriental type tobaccos. See, I didn't say English. You see, Russ, I'm learning. I'm
good
learning.
man.
I didn't say English. So the Oriental type tobaccos, Early Morning Pipe was fantastic, fantastic. But all I did smoke was Dunhills. Okay, so firstly, what's in there? Is it an early morning pipe? And yeah,
Okay. It is about as straightforward of a blend in that genre as you're going to get. It's Virginia's, Orientals, and Latakia. Is it an early morning pipe? Not the way I would conceive of it. I would say it's basically an all day type of tobacco. It's got more Latakia than a lot of people would like first thing. I consider it a medium bodied blend. Has a nice bit of sweetness because of the Virginias. The Orientals are there. They're an influence, but they don't dominate. And I would say in terms of Latakia content, it's probably around 25-30%, which is pretty significant.
Why would they market it as an early morning pipe? Is it a joke or what?
No, I would think probably for whoever was involved in blending it and smoking it, that's what they considered it. An early day type of smoke, where a lot of people might find it a bit heavier than they'd like at breakfast time.
Yeah, I mean, I was a seasoned smoker back then because it was my thing. My all day smoke was my mixture. And when I tried the early morning pipe, it was easy peasy for me in the morning. But knowing now what I know, that's why I asked you, is it really an early morning pipe? Because bloody hell, man, it's full and smoky and blood, you know?
Yeah, no, it's got plenty of flavor, and again, I would consider it a medium-bodied smoke, but it doesn't have a, I guess from this aspect, doesn't have a high nicotine content.
Okay. Okay, maybe that's why.
Flavor intensity, it's definitely not to me an early morning blend, but it does not have much in the way of nicotine versus its opposite piece from the same collection.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Um, Now, they licensed that. Did they license it or sell it to Peterson?
They sold, well, that's kind of a multi-tiered thing.
Mm.
Um, Peterson wanted to sell. Um, the company, the wholesale division of smoking pipes, wanted to buy the pipes, but they didn't want to have anything to do with the tobaccos, the
Mm.
Peterson tobaccos, mainly because they would have had to deal with another company to manufacture them.
Mm-hmm.
So a deal was reached where they got the Peterson Pipes and Pipe Factory, and the Peterson tobacco brand was sold to STG, the company I work for. So Scandinavian Tobacco Group took it over. And then when the whole thing came down with Dunhill saying, we don't want our name on anything having to do with tobacco anymore. Um, so they wouldn't allow the tobaccos to have the Dunhill name going forward. Well, STG had just bought Peterson and dealt with British American Tobacco, which actually owned the blends. And British American Tobacco didn't want to produce it without the Dunhill name.
Oh,
So
gee.
they sold the blends and the artwork and the names to STG, who was already Scandinavian Tobacco Group from the Orlik factory, was already making those tobaccos. So the only thing that really happened was they transferred the blend names and the artwork to the Peterson brand, and they continued to be made in the same factory on the same lines. So nothing changed.
Nothing has changed.
Nothing other than the label.
So anybody who says it's different, this and that, they're full of it. And you can say that with certainty that nothing has changed.
It's the company I work for.
Okay.
I
Okay.
have inside information. I'm telling you,
I don't want to press you.
nothing about the blends changed when they became Peterson. The only the only difference is that it says Peterson at the top of the label instead of Dunhill.
It's because I watched a few review people do this, and they're all like, "It's not the same, this and that," and I'm like, "Well, how different can it be, man? I mean, like you say,
If you have, let's say, a large container, like a garbage can, okay? And you have farm animals, and you scoop up that the leavings and
The
put them all,
byproduct.
yes, and put them all in the garbage can until it reaches the top. What is that can? It's
What is
full
it?
of,
Yeah.
okay,
Full of byproduct.
yes. Anybody who says that the blends changed is on an equivalent with that garbage can.
So I mean, you're not saying this because you're advocating for
No,
STG. Yeah, yeah,
no.
I
As a
get it.
matter of fact, I rarely smoke Dunhill tobaccos.
All right, all
Um,
right.
they're not in my wheelhouse for flavor anymore.
No rotate. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
But
yeah.
but I mean I know it comes out of the same factory. It's made by the same people. They buy the tobacco from the same sources.
Uh,
Nothing changed other than the label. But some people can taste the label. So the so maybe that's why they're having a problem.
I was gonna say that maybe the tin notes
My
different.
palate is not that acute that I can taste the label of the tin that I'm smoking. But
But you still got a lot to learn, Russ.
yes, yes,
Okay, okay, so okay, early morning pipe. All right, and you said
yeah,
there's Virginias in there, right?
yeah.
Which I was surprised that there's Virginias in there,
Well, there's
but I don't remember. Right?
bright Virginias.
Um, let's go to standard mixture. Standard.
Hmm.
Okay, one. What's standard about it? And I don't think Peterson has this in their roster right now, right?
No, they do.
They do. There's
They
some. There's
the
some.
one that they have, the one that they have though is what used to be called standard mixture medium. But you can't use those kind of descriptors anymore because it runs afoul of regulations.
I don't get it.
You can't use the word mild anymore because that indicates that it's safer to smoke. And so things like mild, medium, strong, those kind of descriptors basically have to be removed.
Seriously.
Seriously. So this is the old standard mixture medium. What's standard about it is, I guess, that Alfred Dunhill considered it standard. Um, and it's to me, in terms of flavor intensity, it's actually above medium. I
Oh.
would consider this medium to full.
And why what gives it that medium hierarchy, whatever?
Latakia content. It's got more latakia than, let's say, early morning pipe. And
Really?
yeah, yeah. And I think it also has more Orientals versus Virginias.
And that's standard.
That's what they called it. You know, who the hell knows where they came up with the name?
And you've smoked that before, obviously.
Well, of course.
Were you a long time Dunhill smoker?
I smoked a lot of Dunhills in my earlier years, yeah.
And then you grew up, right?
Well, I started moving on. I started doing more blending, so obviously I'm smoking more of the stuff that I blended from my palate.
Right, right, right.
And also, I started gradually moving more away from Latakia and smoking um, more complex mixtures.
So are you saying that a Latakia blend, not a blend, the Latakia is not a complex leaf or
Well,
process?
Latakia is not a leaf.
Right, a process.
Yeah, it's a process. That being said, What are you going to say about Latakia other than smoky, leathery, and woody? There's not much more to say.
Licoricey?
Yeah, some people could detect a hint of anise in the flavor of Latakia, which is why, by the way, one of the flavors that's used in Bengal slices is licorice because it's compatible with Latakia.
And you know what? I've got a big what do they call it there? I have a lot of tobaccos in my rotation, right?
Mhm.
And I just smoked the Warhorse Green again. I just love it. I just love it. There's it's you know what it is, man. For me, it's it's very well. You say it's an Irish style tobacco, right?
Yeah.
And all I can think of Irish is what you said concerning Warhorse, but it's very very distinct English type, and I don't mean English Oriental type, just English style of making this tobacco. It's just a wonderful smoke. It's it's really I find it really complex. I haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg in terms of flavors, but that um that licoricey flavor you have in there is something else, man.
It's the easiest way to describe both of those blends is like that Gawith and Hogarth, or Samuel Gawith, was making one of their Lakeland aromatics and they accidentally added too much flavoring, because that is kind of what it is. It's like an amped up Lakeland.
But you wouldn't call it an aromatic. I wouldn't call it an aromatic.
It's only aromatic in the fact that it has a noticeably dominant aroma.
Very
The,
floral,
the,
yeah.
the aroma greatly masks the smell of the tobacco, which really is a blessing because that's dark fired, dark air cured, and some red Virginia. And where you and I might not mind that smell, pretty much anybody else is going to say it smells like you're burning manure.
Seriously?
Yeah, well, think how heavily fermented both the dark fired and the dark air cured are. I mean, there is definitely a fermented, almost silage type of smell to
I
those
guess
tomatoes.
I guess I like the smell of shit, Russ.
Of course. And 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 that's one of the reasons why the flavoring is so distinct on those, was we had to come up with a combination of flavors that would make it more palatable to the non-smoker's nose.
Man, who cares about the non-smokers? I don't.
There, well, you may be the exception. I think the majority of pipe smokers don't like it when somebody goes, "Oh, what the hell are you smoking?"
You know what? I don't care.
Yeah,
Really, I don't care because I was born in Quebec and everybody would smoke Gauloise and all that. And what can I tell you, man? That was
Gauloise, Gitan.
Gitan and Gauloise. And it smelled like shit.
It smelled like feet.
Hey, are you into cheeses?
Yeah, it definitely had that funky cheese aroma to it.
So you see,
Um,
it's because you're a chef,
like like
Russ.
like it was more like Limburger.
Yeah, man, I love that cheese.
Oh, Limburger, one of the greatest tasting cheeses in the world that smelled like a hamper full of old
Is
socks.
that incredible? I remember I was at the supermarket and they had some Lindbergher, and it's cellophane, right? So I
Yep.
pick it up, I smell it, and man, could you smell it through the cellophane? And there was a guy next to me. I didn't know. I said, "Hey, buddy, smell this," and he was like, "Holy cow!"
Yeah, they used to double wrap Limburger
Doesn't
to
matter.
keep the odor under control. My grandfather, who I never met, used to go to a bar with my father, and they would sit there and have beers, and they would both have Limburger sandwiches. They would take pumpernickel and spread Limburger on the pumpernickel and add slices of red onion.
My mouth is watering, Russ. Seriously, I was
And
born in the wrong time. I'm a
they would
tavern guy. I'm a
they would
tavern guy.
yep. And they would sit there at the bar and have the sandwiches and drink their beers. Um, and interestingly enough, it didn't linger on the palate the way that the aroma lingers in the air.
No, it's a mild cheese.
Yeah. And so you would actually know that they had gone, according to my mother, mainly because she could smell the onion on his breath, but she couldn't smell the Limburg.
You know, um,
Anyway, yeah, Gauloises and Gitan, definitely reminiscent of that old sock smell.
and where are those people today, Russ? Where are those old crunchy, grognardy people, old men who like, and those taverns? What happened?
Get a shovel
All
if you
right.
want to find out what happened to them, because you're going to have to dig them up.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't know. I want to become one of those. I guess I am one of those, and whatever. Okay, let's go on. Let's go on.
You're a throwback. Okay.
Uh, well, if you can lift me, I got to lose a bit of weight first. But anyways, um, okay. Royal Yacht.
Royal yuck
Yes.
is how it's pronounced.
Now, is this an aromatic?
It definitely is aromatic.
Now, what's in it? What's going on?
Virginias and Burleys, but as with a number of the European factories at the time, they were using African Virginias in the blend. So it smelled kind of lightly perfumy, somewhat Lakeland like. But for that reason, it was a real sneaky tobacco, because you'd get it thinking that it's this mellow aromatic that people wouldn't mind the aroma, and then you'd light it up and get halfway through the bowl and go, "Whoa, room spinning!"
No, uh, I I'm a fan of African Virginias, and why is that? Like, why do tend to go towards an African Virginia? I find is it more bitey? And I find it less bitey, as a matter of fact.
No, I would say it's less bitey, slightly more flavorful, because the higher nicotine content does add a little spice. But it's a round flavor. It's not a sharp flavor. And that nicotine content, just because the flavor is relatively innocuous, the nicotine hit just comes out of nowhere. It really does catch you off guard the first time you try it.
Mm.
Then you learn to expect it. But
It's funny. I must have a high tolerance, man.
well, yeah, you know, anytime you've been doing this for a while, you build up a tolerance. And if you ever smoked cigarettes in the past, that also will have an impact. A lot of
Meaning,
people who quit cigarettes and go to a pipe can go to something like Royal Yacht, and they find it pleasant. They don't find it off-putting.
but
But that's because their bodies are used to that nicotine hit.
I tried my neighbor. My neighbor wants to get off cigarettes, so I said, "Hey, try a pipe." But the problem with him is that his, um, um, he inhales the bloody thing, man.
Yeah, and that for some people, inhaling the tobacco is part and parcel of why they smoke cigarettes. Um, and so when you give them a high potency tobacco and they inhale, and the first thing that happens to them is they get that catch when they inhale because it's much stronger than their body is used to.
No kidding.
And then, of course, when you inhale, the nicotine breaks the blood brain barrier in less than 10 seconds. Now, when you smoke a pipe, it takes about 20 minutes. And that's because only the mucous membranes of your mouth and tongue are absorbing the nicotine. And because of the way your body is constructed, it takes longer to get into the blood and then through the circulatory system and to reach the brain and break the barrier. When you smoke a cigarette and inhale, you bring the smoke down into your lungs, and you've got a bunch of those little grape like bodies in your lung, and that's all surface area. So you inhale into your lungs, and all that surface area is sucking up the nicotine. And because your heart and your lungs are part of a system, your lungs pick up the nicotine, your heart distributes it almost immediately. It hits your brain, breaks the barrier. That's why a lot of people, if they went to bed early and got up in the morning and they grabbed that first cigarette of the day, the room would spin a bit because that first cigarette hit them so quickly with so much nicotine that they would get lightheaded. You know, the nicotine buzz.
Gotta feel sick.
Um, I can't even imagine what that would be like with, you know, Gowith, Kendall Dark, or Warhorse. I mean, I'd be sick for days at that.
Oh my god, it's making me sick just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Anyways, he ain't smoking anymore.
Oh, well,
Well, I mean, he ain't smoking. He ain't smoking a pipe anymore because
okay.
it's like he's inhaling the bloody thing all
Yeah,
the time.
no.
Yeah, and that's what I said. Nah, 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 nah. And you know what? He really liked to smoke. God, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
Just pure Cavendish.
Yeah.
Anyways, okay, stop getting me off topic here.
Okay.
So Royal Yacht, what's in it again?
Virginia's and Burley's. It may get, geez, you know, it may be all Virginia. But for some reason, I think it's Virginia's and Burley's. Let me check something real quick here.
What are the tobaccos that did not transfer from Dunhill to Peterson?
The if the if the blends were predicate, meaning that they in the U.S. made prior to on the market as of February 15th, 2007, they could still be brought back. But Royal Yacht is a straight Virginia, by the way.
Seriously,
So
yeah.
it's all African Virginia, I'm sure.
Oof. Okay, that's why the hit.
Yeah. But those blends could be brought back if they wanted to. The reason they reduced them to what is now currently available is because those are the ones that sold. The other ones that they dropped, the sales volume just wasn't as high. So they kept the heavy hitters.
I remember I used to like the Navy Flake one they used to have there in the square box. I forget what it was called.
Oh, the only flake that regular flake, they had two, well, two, dark flake and flake, which at one time was called light flake, but you can't use the term light anymore either. So there was Dunhill Flake and then Dunhill Dark Flake. And then they have the deluxe Navy rolls,
That's the one I
which
was thinking of.
they're
Okay,
still available.
what about the Dark Flake?
Dark Flake, no, because that was not in the U.S. That was not in the U.S. as of 2007. It had been off the market over here.
I
So
never smoked the Dark Flake one. Was it nice?
yeah, it was a good smoke. It depends, if you were a Virginia smoker, you would probably find it really interesting.
Mm.
If you're a Latakia smoker, an aromatic smoker, or a burley smoker, you'd probably go, meh.
It's funny, eh? I'm neither a Latakia, neither a Virginia, neither a Burley. I'm a what the hell do I feel like having tonight type of smoker.
That's the way I've always been.
You know?
I've
Okay, I'm
been the
becoming
same.
like that. I guess you're having a bad influence on me. Okay,
One of these days you'll get stupid and decide to blend tobacco.
you know, and I wanted to talk to you about blending blended tobaccos. I find it ridiculous. But anyways, that's
Yeah,
another subject.
it's difficult because you don't know what's under the surface,
But,
and sometimes when you put them together, they don't work.
but I mean, you're blending a blended tobacco.
Yeah, yeah. And as far as again, I smoke whatever I like, whatever strikes me at the moment.
Yeah.
And if you are ever thinking about getting into blending tobacco, I'll be more than happy to help you, because just bear this one thing in mind: the way to make a small fortune in blending pipe tobacco is to start off with a large fortune.
So it's a win-win situation, right?
Yeah, especially if you like sleeping in a refrigerator box.
Hey, I know a lot of Italians, so don't worry about it.
Okay.
Um, okay, next one. This was my go-to tobacco for many, many, many years. It was my first real tobacco because I used to smoke only aromatics, and the stuff I used to smoke was Captain Black. And look, there's nothing wrong with Captain Black, but you know what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, whatever. Uh, my mixture 965, the coveted my mixture 965. Why is this perfect?
Um, because it's got a very nice old fashioned label on it.
That's why, yeah.
No, actually, we talk about those misnomers as far as the genre names go. Uh, and people would always say that's my favorite English tobacco. By even the old definitions, it's not in English. That's a Scottish blend.
I love Scottish blends, by the way.
Yeah, Scottish blends basically are Latakia Orientals. Sometimes there weren't any Orientals, but Latakia or Virginia's Orientals and Latakia, with the addition of what the Brits call brown Cavendish. Now, brown Cavendish and black Cavendish in the US are the same thing.
Mm.
In Europe, black Cavendish is made by stoving Virginia until it turns black.
Mm,
Then they may steam it and add flavorings to it.
mm.
We call that in the U.S. stoved or black Virginia.
You're talking about that sweet, 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 very aromatic.
Well, it doesn't have to be. No, you just take Virginia and you either put it in a machine or on sheets and you toast it until it becomes black. No flavorings added. It's not moist. And as a blending component, you don't want to use a lot of it in a blend because it tends to burn a little hot. But if you want to tame it down and use it in an aromatic, you can steam it and flavor it. Now that's in Europe. In the US, we don't use Virginia to make black Cavendish. We take barley, we treat it with sugar water, and then we toast it. And when it comes out, it's more of a dusky dark brown than black. But when you steam it and add flavorings to it, it turns black.
So basically, it's a condiment tobacco, man.
That's all it is. It's a sweetened, toasted barley. And that's what the Brits call brown Cavendish.
Okay.
And so my mixture 965 is Virginia Orientals, Latakia, and then some of that brown Cavendish. The natural process of making that Cavendish gives it a bit of a brown sugar note. So what you have there is just a mellow underlying sweetness that kind of rounds out the flavor of the blend. You don't really taste it. It doesn't jump out at you, but when it combines with the rest of the tobaccos in the blends, it tends to give it a smoother, richer, and more velvety flavor.
Because it was pretty velvety, man.
Yeah.
And I must have smoked that for 5 years. I would buy a tin a month, and this was like, I'd say 30 years ago, Russ. And the tins back then were cheap in Canada. They were $50 each.
Oh, I think at that time I was paying $5.99.
And that's not even the tax. Now, you know what? You buy a tin of my mixture and you're going to pay $70 and you're going to pay tax and you're a little shy of 100. Isn't that wonderful? Hey, don't you love Canada? Hey!
Hey, look, you can put a tent in my backyard and a sleeping bag if you want.
Yeah, but your rent is too high. Okay, last but not least, obviously we're gonna hit the other end of early morning pipe, and that's nightcap. One I used to love. I loved nightcap, but why nightcap? Because early morning pipe could be nightcap.
No, I will go along with the name on nightcap.
You will?
Yeah.
Okay, what's in it, man?
Combination of two things: African Virginias and Perique.
That sounds beautiful. You know that?
Yep. And nightcap had a lot of Latakia, so it was very heavy in flavor. It did have Orientals, and they had to be stronger Orientals to stand up to the rest of the blend. And then Virginias, African Virginias, and Perique. So nightcap, of all of their Latakia-based blends, has the biggest hit.
I smoked a lot of that, man.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely would give a newer pipe smoker a buzz. It made a number of people queasy
Now,
over the years.
Out of these 5 blends, and actually, out of these 5 blends, why did they keep the same theme in terms of Orientals other than Royal Yacht? Like, Why so Orientalish?
Well, Orientals and Latakia actually starting out as an Oriental, um, there's a synergy there between Orientals and Latakia.
So what if it ain't broke, don't fix it?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably correct. For example, when I was putting together White Knight and Black House in the Hearth and Home Marquee series, Yaniji and Basma, when they're used with Latakia, produce a an incense like aroma,
Mm-hmm.
and it fills the room. And that's because of the synergy between those Orientals and the Latakia. Now, other blends where it's not as bright and perfumey, they're probably using tobaccos that are more like Ishmir and Smyrna, which don't have that floral herbal quality. They're more earthy, but that gives it a bigger, rounder flavor. And apparently, whoever was doing the blending for Dunhill, whether it was Alfred himself or someone else, they must have just had an affinity for those tobaccos. And as you said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
And where would they get their Perique from? Not St. James.
Had to be.
But how much can St. James produce, for God's sake?
Well, back then, Perique wasn't a very common fundamental tobacco.
Oh, I see, I see. Okay, okay. Wow.
And there were more farmers growing it in that region back then and more people processing it.
Seriously.
Yeah.
But there's a market for that stuff. Why don't
Yeah,
the why don't
there's only two processors right now,
I
and
know.
one processor sells everything to one company.
How much can he make?
Well, that's the creation of Acadian Perique is what changed all that. Because there's only 11 acres of land in that growing, or 11 farmers, I'm sorry, 11 farmers in that triangular area. And it's actually triangular with one spot on the other side of the river. But there were only 11 farmers growing, so they couldn't produce a lot, and that number had dropped significantly over the years going into like the 60s and 70s. And when Mark Ryan when Mr. Poche, before Mark Ryan bought the company, he found that it was easier to come up with an alternative than it was to fight to try to get farmers to grow more tobacco. So what he did was he brought in dark air cured tobacco from other parts of the US. He would only buy the higher grades, but then he would process it like Perique, and the flavor was similar enough that if you took some St. James Perique and you took some of this and mixed it together, it tasted pretty much the same as regular Perique, regular St. James Perique.
Now, there's nothing wrong with Acadian Perique.
No.
Right.
And that's been made for over 40 years. So anybody who says, 20 years ago, I smoked this blend and the Perique tasted a lot different. Not if it came from LA Poche, because they've been making it that way for 40 years.
Russ, you know who you remind me of? You ever see that he's actually Canadian? He's the magician uh, Buster, the hypnotist Buster, Randy something.
Oh, Rand, yeah, yeah, Rand, who passed away a couple of
He
years.
just passed away. That's right.
Yeah,
And you remind me of that guy. You
you
just
makes
kill
me. He
everybody
makes
with
me.
the truth.
I'm more like MythBusters.
Yeah, you just kill everybody with the truth, man. It's like, come on, you're stupid. I was there.
Look, one of the common tendencies in the modern world is to make something as complicated as you possibly can, whether it's in your imagination or actually. We tend to complicate things and come up with conspiracy theories when the answer is very simple and right in front of you, and there's no reason for it.
Oh God.
But we do that. We do that as a matter of course today.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the truth of the matter is, if you think you've got it figured out with some complex theory,
Oh Jesus.
99.9% of the time, you're wrong.
So it makes me think that Oswald killed Kennedy. You know what I'm saying?
He might very well have.
Maybe. I don't. Maybe it was a good
Just
shot, man.
just think just think about back in the 1800s into the 1900s, and you wanted to can food. So what you had to do is take a formed can, and then you had to put a lid on it, and each one had to be soldered with lead solder near your food. Okay. And it took decades for somebody to think, suppose we put a bigger lid on the can than the can itself. And then we roll around the outside of the rim and we fold that bigger lid onto the can. Super simple, no soldering involved. Somebody thought simpler and came up with the ideal solution.
And it took
But
50 years.
yeah, we always want to make things more complicated because I think it proves to ourselves how clever we are.
Yeah, we're
When
clever.
the truth of the matter is, the more clever you think you are, the dumber you get.
Yes, yes. And you know what? Here's the last story with everybody who's clever. We had in Quebec, because we have a high buying power for alcohol because it's state run, right? So we know our alcohol, plus we know our weed too. But anyways,
Okay.
um, Quebec bought, um, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if it was a Scotch or if it was a Napoleon cognac. I tend to think it was a Scotch. It was a Scotch because they had the stag head. Which Scotch has the stag? Dalmore.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
Dalmore silver stag head in a crystal bottle. 3 grand. That bottle was 3 grand. But the idiots, because they wanted to make it so beautiful, crystal has lead in it.
Yeah.
So they showed it on TV. They had to pour it all down the drain. You can't drink it. You're gonna die.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Jeez.
That's somewhat reminiscent of Blanton's bourbon today. They don't use crystal, but they do have this really nice. It kind of reminds me of an orb that that the royal family has, the one that they always picture with the crown on top
Yes,
and the
yes, yes, yeah.
okay.
Yes, yes.
They make it in a glass bottle that's shaped like that, but the stoppers are all cork with a pewter horse,
Okay.
and there are 7 different horses, and each one has one of the letters from Blanton's underneath it. And so a lot of people buy Blanton's trying to collect the entire set of stoppers, which, if you got the money, I suppose is pretty
I know,
neat.
but and the thing is that don't give me that fancy bottle. Just lower the price, please. Anyways,
Yep.
Russ, my God, thank you so much for this
By the way,
again.
I got a question for you. I have to
Ah,
ask you.
ah.
You have a keyboard against the wall behind you. What is it?
Yeah, it's a controller. It's a
Okay, just a MIDI controller.
yeah, it's an M audio thing, and you know what it is? I can't believe that's $200. It's just a piece of plastic, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Well, so what keyboard did you buy, man?
Well, I've currently got a Yamaha, but it's an older model,
Yeah, get away
and
from Yamaha. I hate Yamaha and their reps.
I'm looking at a number of new keyboards because I need to upgrade it.
Are you looking
Um,
for the piano touch or no?
Actually, being an organist, attack sensitivity isn't that big a deal for me. I tend to play it more like an organ with an even feel.
Gotcha.
Um, but there are 3 companies that I'm looking at right now, but one of them just it's because of the source. I'm starting to think to myself, do I really want to go down that road to try something? But I'm looking at a Yamaha, the PSR SX 9000 or 9,000, yeah, 900. And I mean, the sound reproduction is just incredible. It can sound like virtually any instrument you can imagine that has a lot of musical styles on it. But also, I'm looking at a Kurzweil,
Yeah, I was gonna say Kurzweil. I was gonna say it, Russ.
and they make a very nice one. And then one came out of nowhere as I'm doing my research, and it comes from Medeli.
Adeli?
Medeli,
Boo.
Medeli, and I watched demos of it, and I'm going, wow, that thing has some really great sounds on it. And then I look it up online, and it sells for more than $1,000 less than the Yamaha.
Yeah. Um, I don't know what to tell you. I
Yeah,
understand. I understand. Uh, I never heard of Medeli. I've heard of Yamaha, but we all have our preferences. I don't like
yeah,
Yamaha. I'd rather go Roland than Yamaha. But Kurzweil is an instrument. You're paying for it. The guy behind Kurzweil, Ray Kurzweil,
yeah,
is a genius of all geniuses. I
yes,
mean, he does that. He does that when he's sitting on the can. You know, his side business, Ray Kurzweil. But
yeah,
anyways,
yep.
so anyways,
Okay,
did you check out Nord Lead for some reason?
what's that?
Nord.
No,
Okay, it's probably not what you're looking for. Russ, thanks. It sounds like you're busy. I've taken already your busy day. Uh, I don't know what to say, but thank you so much. Thank you.
glad to do it.